Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Now You Hear Me, the podcast that gives a voice to musicians across cultures. I'm your host, Martha Betubiza. I felt like in starting this podcast that there was no better person to start with than Liv Greene. She's a dear friend of mine for the last 13 years or so, and she's an immensely talented folk singer-songwriter. We talked about so many things on this podcast, from the two of us playing music together in high school, to her discovering her love for songwriting and going to performing arts camps, to the creation of her sophomore album, Deep Feeler, and recording that on tape. I know that I'm definitely super biased, but I think you'll fall in love with her. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy. She's here, she's queer, she's my friend of 13 years, Liv Greene!
Hi, Martha. I'm so glad to be here. So glad.
I'm really happy that this is happening and that you're my first guest.
I'm so honored. You are one of my favorite brains in music, and so I'm very stoked.
That means a lot. Thank you very much. I would like to start at the beginning. I know that music was a big part of your upbringing, even before you started to play guitar and start to write songs. So I'm curious about who your parents played in the house and what those early inspirations were.
Yeah, so it's funny, in the folk world, a lot of people played in family bands, or I remember going to some bluegrass festivals or whatever, which are such niche spaces that are kind of silly, but also really great. It impacted me a lot as a kid. A lot of the people were given a fiddle from age 4, or banjo or whatever instrument. And so I felt a little weird for not having a musical family, but my parents, as much as they weren't musicians, they're such big music people. My whole childhood would go see live music, and so whenever we had a babysitter, it was probably because my parents were going to a show, and they would come home with the CDs of the headliner and the opening act. And so it was just the 6 CD changer in our house was always full of really great music, including Counting Crows, Brandy Carlisle. Counting Crows gets a bad rap. It's not just the Shrek soundtrack.
I honestly, I really went through a Counting Crows phase in high school, because I don't know if you remember when Stone Ridge, our former high school, used to do those book sales every year. They had a bunch of Counting Crows CDs one year, and so I just bought a bunch, and I really went through a phase. They're the best.
Yes, I remember I volunteered at it once. The big book sale. I was helping sort or something.
It literally used to be the biggest book sale on the East Coast, and then it ended.
Do they still do it?
Mm-mm. I know.
Oh, pardon me. Okay, wait. What is the
no free to say whatever you want.
Okay, just wanted to check. Basically just lots of great music. Counting Crows, deep cuts, you know what I mean. Long December in particular has been an anthem. But what else? Patty Griffin, Sean Colvin, Tracy Chapman, just really freaking good singer-songwriter. Jackson Brown, James Taylor, a lot of folky singer-songwriter stuff. And so that was kind of my musical DNA. And so when I kind of fell in love with songwriting in high school, I found my way back to the stuff that my parents played when I was a kid, and kind of used those as my North Star in when I first got serious about writing songs. And so that's kind of how it started in that sense.
I am also curious about, your beginnings with writing songs. I feel like you and I have something in common that honestly, I'm sure a lot of people have in common, is that we went to a Taylor Swift show when we were younger, and it kind of solidified our want to be in the music industry.
Big time.
So you got a guitar after that, right? And started writing. How did you go from just the music fan to then a music creator?
Yeah, so I feel like people, obviously, there are so many layers to the Taylor Swift conversation. I feel like Taylor Swift, a lot of people, their main reason for being mad is she's too big. And it's at a certain point, I feel like Taylor Swift and Beyonce are in a different category of industry. It's a whole nother realm of achievement. And yeah, but I feel like people knock her a lot for stuff like that, winning every single award or whatever else. And yeah, I think she has influenced a massive number of young songwriters. Pretty much every young girl or people raised as girls my age who got into songwriting when they were younger, like did it because they went to like a Taylor concert.
Yeah.
And just seeing her, I went to the Fearless tour in 2009. I was like 11.
Me too.
And seeing her, yeah, Merriweather Pest Pavilion.
The best.
And seeing her like playing guitar and singing songs that she had written was just like, whoa, I could do that too. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that representation was huge. Asked for a guitar for Christmas that year, and my uncle lent me one. It's actually behind me, I think. Well, podcast listeners can't see it, but it's like a
there's a
string.
chance this will be on YouTube, so maybe they'll be able to see that.
Well, yeah, there it is. But yeah, just started teaching myself on YouTube, and then I think just the fact of like seeing like a young girl do the thing I wanted to do was like, oh man, I want to do that. Like immediately, there was like a jealousy of like, I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just super like lit the fire under me. And I didn't really know, my whole life I loved music. Like I sang in choir and I tried out for musicals and always got ensemble, but I knew I loved to sing, but I didn't know where my musicality should land. So I think that was like just the natural thing. Once I started playing guitar, I was like, oh, I can write songs and do the singer-songwriter thing.
Yeah. I think it's also really interesting that you use the word jealousy, because I feel like that is an emotion that's seen as like so negative, but truthfully, I feel like a lot of times in my life where I know that I need to be pushed in maybe a different direction kind of comes from jealousy, and like not really in a bad way, but I think it just kind of shows you the thing that you want for yourself, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, the artist's way that like, I think I have it over here.
I still haven't done the artist's way. My sister's done it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm trying to do it with my sister. So maybe that would be cute if we did like a sister Zoom artist way. But
wait, which sister?
Madeline.
Love.
But yeah, I did it a couple years ago, but Julia Cameron, the woman in it, which if people don't know about it, the artist way is like a autonomous 12-week course that you like run yourself or with a group. And you just like, basically it's like a creative recovery, but she talks about jealousy maps, or jealousy mapping, where you like write down like some things you're jealous about and then what that could translate to in terms of like an action in your life.
Oh, wow.
So that's been really cool. I feel like my friends and I, especially as we all are like trying to do the same thing, like my very best friends and I, like going into the industry and like trying to like, often we're going out for the same tours or whatever else. Like it's like a recipe for jealousy. And we all have just gotten to the point where like we're very open about being able to talk about it and not be ashamed, because it's a normal human emotion. And it's so true. Like, just like, I don't know, I remember like times in the past when I didn't know I wanted to do something, seeing someone else do it, I was like, oh man, that's just like my desire peeking out from like under a bunch of other things. I love that's been your experience as well.
Yeah, I think it's like a really, like, not trying to toot my horn or your horn, but like I do think it's a mature thing to realize that, like, you know, jealousy can be an indicator, and it should never really, you know, get in the way of your ability to function or your ability to, you know, have friendships or whatever. But I think it's an indicator, like every other emotion is an indicator, and it's healthy in certain doses. Absolutely. I am also curious about hearing about the significance that camp has had on you and your artist growth, like Interlochen, where you did the summer camp and also went for your last year of high school for boarding school, as well as Miles of Music, or any other maybe camps or communities you've been able to form. Totally. Camp is so huge. I feel like in particular, for folks that maybe didn't grow up in a musical community, like camp is such a great immersion program, essentially, for like being around professional musicians, for example. Like DC doesn't have a ton of professional musicians living there. There are a handful for sure, but I don't see them in my everyday life. As a kid, I didn't know any. And so I got to go to Interlochen arts camp, which was primarily kids my age, but then obviously my instructors were professional musicians and educators. But you've gone back there as well to teach.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I've been teaching there the last couple summers, which has been such a cool, like, full circle
That's
moment.
amazing.
Yeah, and like a lot of my friends I made there, they had like one of the first songwriting programs and songwriting camps, and it was pretty early back when I went in 2014, 10 years ago, or almost 11. But
I know, crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been super cool. I mean, so many of my friends that I made there in that songwriting camp, it was like 2 weeks back then, are also still pursuing music and are dear friends of mine, like my friend Jack Schneider, who helped work on this record with me and played guitar on it, and heroes like Chapel Roan, like, were in my group at camp. And I know we have, our girl, she's incredible and just like another league of just brilliance. I'm like very inspired and excited to see all that she's been doing. But it's just been cool, like having, I met so many cool artists like that I wouldn't have otherwise met going to these camps. And in particular at Miles of Music Camp, it's this like all ages roots music camp in New Hampshire on an island in a lake. And it's I went there when I was like 15, just found it on a random Google search, and I ended up meeting a ton of like my now neighbors in East Nashville, just like professional musicians who were going there either to teach or to attend and just like focus on the craft and the art for a week and get out of the treadmill or the rat race. So yeah, just a really inspiring thing to get to be put in creative community with people who are really serious about it. Like, I think camps, if someone's interested about something, go to a camp. Like, summertime is the time. Spend a week. Like, sometimes they have scholarships, and sometimes, I don't know, there are grants you can apply for. And yeah, I feel really privileged to have gotten to go to those different camps in high school, but they definitely like impacted the person that I am now, an artist I am now.
How did you find Interlochen?
I think YouTube or just Google. I remember I had started writing songs when I was like 12, and I was pretty terrible at first.
As everyone
like,
is with anything.
Yeah, like tone deaf, like just like all the songs were like, you know, I have a crush on you, but you don't want, like, teardrops on my guitar, but like bad. Just that whole like unrequited love thing.
Did you have was your voice something that you kind of had to train? I mean, of course, regardless of someone's voice quality, everybody trains it, but was it something where like you or your parents were like, oh, like there's a gift here, or just kind of like, oh, she likes music, you know, because obviously you have a great voice now, but sometimes it's not always there.
More so the latter of like, she's not gonna stop, is she? Like, literally, like, I would just sing. Before I got a guitar, before I started playing guitar, I would go to the swing set in the backyard, partially because my family would be like, okay, Olivia, like, be quiet. Yeah. Because I would just sing nonstop. Like, as a kid, there's so many videos of me just, like, singing improvisational nonsense and doing dances. Like, I just love to make things up. But I was pretty terrible, yeah. And so I then got a guitar, and then it was, like, off-key guitar playing and singing. Like, I would sing in a different key than the guitar. But I had no idea, and I was just playing for hours every day after school. So my family was like, we're putting her in voice lessons. So thank goodness. I feel really grateful to my middle school voice teacher, Lindsay Paradise. Shout out.
Shout out to Lindsay.
Yeah. Right next to Montgomery Mall, International School of Music. It was like in a strip mall by the Five Guys. I made some good memories there. Yeah, took a lot of work, but I think luckily I was so young that I didn't know that I was bad. And so yeah, I think that that's something I try to remind like my adult students when I teach adults is like, sometimes like people say, oh, you're too old to learn. Like those like myths or whatever are usually just, it's harder to learn as an adult because of your ability to criticize yourself, like in your self-awareness. Yes, yeah. And so as much as you can like turn that off and just have fun with it, like, and not judge what's coming out, the better. Because it's like, to learn something new, you have to mess up. Like you have to sound bad. You have to like fail.
Which is really tough for most people. And I think, yeah, especially if you're somebody who has any sort of like perfectionist tendencies, it's just so difficult to start something that you're not good at or just like be bad. But like, yeah, that's something I have to remind myself too a lot is like, you know, when it comes to music, at least, like a lot of songwriters who you see their end product of, you know, a 10-song album or something, and you don't see like the 50 bad songs that they wrote. And I remember one time saving this post that John Mayer made on Instagram about songwriting, and he was like, make it your goal to write a bad song so that you just get something out. And I was like, whoa, like even John Mayer, like one of, you know, my favorite artists who I think, you know, has exceptional lyricism, is like, I purposely make things that are bad so that I can keep making things.
Totally. Yeah. Like one of my favorite old like adages or whatever I heard from,
I know what you're gonna say and I love it.
Yeah, Kina Grannis. Like she was one of my YouTube heroes, and like still a hero. She's amazing. But when I was like in high school, I was obsessed with her. She's a singer-songwriter who used to be posting a lot on YouTube, but she talked about songwriting as like panning for gold. So like going to the river every day, maybe that's your subconscious, just showing up for the craft and like pulling something out every day, even if it's like weird rocks or mud or silt or whatever else. Like it's usually going to be all of that. It's very rarely going to be gold, but the important thing is that you keep showing up, because like it's a game of probability, but it's also like you're flexing your muscles and like tuning your you know, ability to make things, which is cool. But it's so hard, especially when you're like an adult who like has really strong opinions about how things should be, to like explore new territory, because it's like the minute you make something and you're new at it, it's not going to be the stuff that you saw that inspired you to start making. Yeah. Because it's a first product, but that's literally fine. Like no one is expecting that of you. Like, I'm like always trying to remind myself that. And I definitely feel like I deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, like making this record, producing it myself. Like it was a whole kind of journey with that. But
yeah, I want to get into that, of your like producing this record and just the whole creation of it. Tell me about Deep Feeler.
Yeah. Deep Feeler. So Deep Feeler is my record that I put out in October of this past year. And it's 10 songs that are just like essentially like a little coming of age, but like take two. I definitely feel like my first record was I put out a record in May of 2020, which is kind of a funny time to release music.
Totally.
But I feel like this was my first record where I'm out of the closet. So it's like a lot of themes of just like authenticity of self and like sitting and listening to yourself, and early dating experiences out of the closet. So like a lot of songs about just like situationships and getting your heart broken, but and codependency and believing in yourself and self-love and all that. Like it covers a lot of different themes within that area. And then I think the title track Deep Feeler just kind of feels like it encompasses all of it, because I'm a hypersensitive person. I like have ADHD, and one of the main markers of ADHD in women, which I was later diagnosed, it took me a while, even though
me too, there
were a lot of signs and a lot of strife, but one of like the main markers for ADHD in women or two of them is hypertalkative, or like super talkative, and oversensitive, or like hypersensitive or whatever. Sensitivity and like external processing. And so those are like textbook me, and I feel like that has contributed to how I experience romantic situations. And especially being like a young person and feeling things for the first time to a level of depth that I did once I kind of accepted myself for the first time more fully. Like it's just the songs are really about that. And then I produced it myself, and it just kind of captures me like living in Nashville. And I got to work with one of my heroes, Matt Andrews, at Woodland Studios here in Nashville. And that was just so cool. Like he tracked it to tape, and he does like Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings. So like he is like a master of like almost like being a filmmaker to a moment. So it's like the way that it sounds feels like you're there in the room. It's really intimate. And so yeah, we just
Is he
kind
the
of...
one who also did Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, he was one of the engineers on that, which is like
Incredible.
so cool and was like so formative.
I love that movie and soundtrack.
For me. Such a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so I got to work with him, and my friend Jack introduced us and helped set up some of the sessions. And yeah, we just kind of, it started in May of 2022 with just some solo recordings. We thought we were just going to make like a Living with Ghosts by Patty Griffin type record of just guitar and voice. And then after we got a few of the songs, I was like, I am hearing more instruments, and Matt was game to do some sessions with a band. And so it just kind of took off from there. And we recorded it over 2022 and 2023. And then, yeah, it's just been a really cool experience, like getting to produce something myself. I kind of started doing it before I realized it. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll just not bring a producer on. And like,
that's amazing.
Matt ended up co-producing some of the songs when my ears got too tired and I was like, I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
He was really like during the tracking of Deep Feeler, in particular, that song, like I was so exhausted in the studio that like I couldn't tell if we had the take or whatever. And so he definitely like, you know, I didn't say like, can you take the wheel, but he did. And thank God. So that's, I feel like that's most accurate. And yeah, it was just like an incredible learning experience. And like the whole thing kind of marks just me listening to myself and believing in myself and putting myself out there. So I'm very proud of it and excited that like the songs have been connecting with people. And like, I feel really grateful for how it's landed in the world.
That's huge. I feel like I'm very proud of you for this record, and I love it so much and listen to it all the time. And it's really cool to hear about kind of the self-growth in the creation of the album, whether it's, you know, you producing it and then also just getting a little bit more autobiographical with the lyrics and now being, you know, more comfortable with who you are and being able to express that in a different way. Did releasing it feel any more vulnerable than past releases, since this was a bit more personal?
It's funny. I feel like the subject matter, by the time that like a lot of musicians who are maybe don't have a bigger team or whatever, and so you have to pitch it and like you sit on it for a long time, I feel like the songs themselves, I was almost like immune or numb to people's reactions to them by the time I put it out, because I had played them live funny. For so long. Yeah.
That's
so it's
true.
like,
I felt like I remember texting you and being like, oh, I know the words to half of these because I've seen you play them live.
Like the album release show in Nashville, like half of the room was people I know personally, and like they were like singing all the words and it had just come out, you know. It's like that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that overall, like I was on like a German radio show the other day, and this woman,
tell me about that. That's amazing.
It was very interesting. It was like, it's like one of their cool like cultural shows over there, and this woman, the host, like asked me, she was like, so I saw in your press materials, like it says you're a queer songwriter and that you know, some of the songs on the record have to do with that. Like in my experience, that's always been a very like personal and private thing, and like why did you feel the need to share it, and like how does it relate to the songs on the record? And like I kind of like took a little breath. I was like, ooh, like I like could be offended by this if I wanted to be, but I think like I talked to some friends about it and they were like, oh, it might be a cultural thing in Germany, like people are more private. But I think just the whole record release campaign and like putting myself out there, making a music video was like really harder than I imagined it would ever be, in terms of like being okay with footage of my body skating, and like, you know, just like
beautiful footage, by the way. I love it.
Thank you. Putting myself out there literally like in the industry, being like, hi, I produced this myself. There aren't that many bells and whistles on it. It's really raw. We didn't edit the vocals much because it's tape. Like it's just like there's pitch humanity in it, and like it's not hyper produced, and like please, like, hopefully it does well. Like, putting that part of it more so than the subject matter. And also just, like, then the press stuff of, like, having to answer a question like that. And I knew how to answer it. It was I was just like, you know, queerness is central to this chapter of my life and what led me to write these songs. And self-love is such an important theme of the record. And I think that's what queerness is all about, is self-love. And also, yeah, just like being proud and loud about it is so that young queer people don't feel so alone. Because I know that I
totally,
like, watching Brandi Carlile in concert when I was like 14, like, could have saved my life. Like, I can't tell you what number of things made it so that I'm still here today. And I'm very privileged, like, growing up in DC, like, Stone Ridge was relatively, you know, supportive of queerness, but it also, there were not many people out at the time that we were in high school. And so, like, it didn't feel like, it felt like an othered thing. Like, I didn't want to,
totally,
I didn't let myself kind of embrace it. Also, because Catholicism taught me that it was bad.
Yeah, for context for listeners, we went to an all-girls private Catholic school. So
yeah, we did.
Do with that what you will.
Yeah. And we played in music ministry together.
We did play in music ministry together. Our school had like masses, like probably once a month, I don't know. And we were in the music ministry together, and we would just like play guitar during the masses. And honestly, I just feel like that is how you and I really became friends. You, me, and Lauren. Shout out to Lauren.
Totally.
And also, I just feel like it really kept me, like, talking about ADHD, it really kept me alive during mass, because otherwise I would not be paying attention, because it gave me something to like, okay, well, these are all the songs that we're playing, and we have to play them after this time. So I have to know when we're going to stand up and pray and sit down and whatever.
Totally.
It kept me alive, truthfully.
Literally, I hadn't ever thought about it that way, because often people have been like, oh, you played in church. That must be like why you're such a good musician. And I was like, okay, it's the Catholic Church. Like, like, I think the person I was talking to, like, yeah, it's don't get any ideas. But also, we absolutely slayed that Celtic Alleluia.
No, we slayed.
Like, all the like Catholic mass parts, like, holy, holy, holy.
Yes.
Yeah, like, Lord God of hosts,
no,
and all the Picardy thirds, and like just our little music books that we had like annotated the chords in. We were like the guitar section, and we held it down.
The guitar crew, us, Lauren, and Mr. Thompson.
It was so sweet.
King.
Yeah, we really held it down. I'm glad I didn't have to go. I went to Interlochen, the aforementioned, for just my senior year of high school, and I'm glad I didn't have to go to Stone Ridge without you guys.
Honestly, I felt the same way. I was like, you know what? Liv and I are leaving at the same time.
I know. I love it.
I remember the moment that you told me that you were going to Interlochen. You came into the senior lounge, and you were like, Martha, like, and I had no clue that there was a school as well or anything.
Yeah.
And you were like, Martha, like, I have news for you. I was like, oh my God, what? And you were like, I'm going to Interlochen next year. And I was like, what? And you explained that it was a boarding school and whatever. And I remember one of my first questions was, is Kaylee going?
Yeah.
And you were like, Kaylee's career is taking off right now, and she like has other things going for her.
I remember that. The Die Young video had gone viral, and the Troye Sivan thing.
Yes, when Troye Sivan tweeted her. And it's so funny seeing like those tweets and
people
stuff
pull it up. I'm like,
now.
I remember that. Kaylee
I
Rose
know. I literally
forever.
I still have all of our like messages talking about
I love it.
your camp experience and all of that. But yeah, I'm happy that you got to experience Interlochen your senior year.
Yeah, it was cool. Like, I know, like, our high school we went to, like, didn't have much in the way of music offerings when we were there.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of one of the only ways that I could play guitar at school.
Yeah.
So I definitely am grateful that I got a year, like, in a music school that was really incredible before going to college. And also, thank goodness for music ministry. I'm glad that it was there. And Mr.
Honestly,
Thompson, what a king.
He was a king. He was like our Mr. Schuster from Glee.
Pretty much, yeah. A sweetie pie.
A sweetie pie.
Yeah.
I have a question about the recording process for Deep Feeler. So you
Totally.
recorded to tape.
Yes.
For listeners, also for myself, can you describe kind of what that process is, and why you chose to record in that way, and what are some of the challenges and like constraints with that?
Totally. So I recorded on tape. So tape has kind of been like one of the, in addition to like self-love and listening to yourself and emotional stuff, like is one of the core things of the whole of this record. And that like at the time that I was writing a lot of these songs, throughout the pandemic, one of my pandemic hobbies was recording myself at home to tape, like on a cassette recorder. So I really fell in love with that process of like working with only 4 tracks. So instead of on GarageBand where you can have like 50,000 tracks, like you only have the 4 and that's it. And you also aren't really like, it's so hard to edit on tape. Like you can't really like make a moment happen that didn't happen. So that practice is really the only way that demoing has ever been, or like recording has ever felt accessible to me because of my perfectionism. And also my, especially with home recording, like we were talking about earlier, like having high standards, but then trying to be a beginner at something. Like recording has always been a nightmare for me because I would sit down and like just press pause and redo it, press pause, redo. And with tape, it's like, okay, like if you stop, you can't use any of that take basically. Like you have to do full takes. Because editing stuff together, like especially if it's a vocal and guitar, like it's not really an option. So it just created this like freedom via constraints throughout the course of like writing the record. So then by the time I got to Nashville and my friend Jack introduced me to Matt Andrews' Tape Hero, King at Woodland, I was like, we were doing it on big tape and I don't know anything about big tape. I just let him do his magic, but it's the same kind of principle where like it's hard to get a lot of tracks. And it's also like editing is really difficult. And so that just, and it also like creates, so I've mainly talked about the constraints, but the beauty of tape is also this warmth that it has. Like there's an organic quality to it. In the sense of like there's tape hiss and like just the general vibe that a voice sounds like coming back on tape rather than like a digitalized voice or like computerized file. It like has this natural warmth that people try to replicate with like plugins on the computer. But it was just like an aesthetic and an ethos that I loved. So working with him, it just kind of fell into place. And it was really hard at times, like working with like musicians who were playing instruments over my tracks. Like we overdubbed a few things. And then it's not like we can just like do 3 takes and then dismiss them. And then after they leave, edit together the best of all the takes. It's like we were editing in the moment. So like I would have like one of my heroes, like Sarah DeRose, like in the studio, and I'd be like in the control room with Matt, like on the talkback being like, okay, wait, I think we've got verse 1 and 2. I'm going to listen real quick. And then we would listen and I would say, okay, like the only part of that whole take that I didn't like was this, like, can we try to punch it in? And then basically what would happen was there was this big anxiety of like, if there was a really good solo, but it wasn't my vision or I wanted something else, we have to roll over it in order to record something different. And so there was, unless Matt opens a new track, but that's a whole bunch of work. And so there were all these moments where like it felt like gambling of like, you know, like we're not quite to my vision, so let's cover it. And then we would go over it and they would get the take, and it was just like so exciting. So it just created a million moments of like spontaneity and like humanity on the record, which I think is really cool, and definitely an impractical way to record, but I I'm glad I did it that way. I like learned a ton from the process.
Yeah, it seems like a really intense process, but a really cool one. Is it something that you see yourself like continuing to do for future releases?
Totally. Yeah, I'm not sure I'll like lean in. I think a lot of people lean into tape and then it becomes their whole musical world. I want to be able to experience as much as I can process wise. So I definitely want to try to make music digitally where there's like, we're working on Logic or Pro Tools or whatever.
Yeah.
I did that with my first record, but it would be cool to do it again in the producer seat, just to experience that kind of angle of it. But I definitely think that in terms of my own recording at home, it's a lot more likely that that's the path. I mean, I have a bunch more recordings I've made that possibly are another record that I've made at home, which has been really cool. Just like making a record on cassette is a goal of mine, whether or not I ever release it or do it up. But just in terms of like goals artistically, like I want to make go even smaller with the tape and like work on the little tape. So
I love that. I really love that.
Thank you.
I would like to deep dive a little bit into some of the specific songs on the record. First, I would like to talk about Made It Mine Too, because that has been one of my favorites for a long time. And I think, I don't know, I don't hear very many songs kind of about this subject. To me, it just kind of feels like the effects of like enmeshment and emotional contagion and, you know, realizing the qualities of somebody else that you might take on and maybe in a self-sacrificial way, but then, you know, you then realize that maybe that's not healthy and that, you know, maybe it was that person, but maybe it was also yourself.
Totally.
But anyway, I would love to hear about whether it's the experience of recording that song or the inspiration.
Yeah. Thank you for the kind words on that song. I wrote it in the pandemic. I think like February of 21, like coming out of a relationship that, yeah, it was a pandemic relationship. It was like very, and also like, it's funny that we're recording this. I don't know if I should leak the day we're recording this, but we're recording this on January 6th.
Leak it.
And like on January 6th, 2024. And like
2025.
Oh my God, my brain. 2025.
All good.
Goodness gracious.
All good.
But like
crazy.
January 6th of 2021 was like I was with this person that, you know, like it was like we went through like the election, like the freaking insurrection, like the pandemic, like it was such a stressful time. We were both musicians and it was like, what's going to happen with our jobs? Like, are we going to be okay? Like we both, it was just like a really, really, really hard time. And so a lot of our relationship was just like literally comforting each other enough to wake up in the morning. Like,
wow.
And almost like helping each other through basic stuff of like, I don't know, like taking on emotional labor for one another and just that enmeshment and like, like needing the other person to like too much in a sense where like, an ideal relationship to me is where like you both are solid individuals and like maybe you have to lean on one another at times, but like you're solid in yourself. And so, and you just enhance each other's lives. And I feel like I was coming out of that relationship and just feeling like, like I was coming back to myself and sort of realizing that like, you know, it takes two to tango. It was both of us and just not wanting to replicate that in my future relationships. Like, like it's important to just like make sure that your emotional work is your emotional work and vice versa. Like you should never feel like you're fixing someone or like they're fixing you or anything like that.
I feel like so many of us have been there in just any sort of relationship, romantic, platonic, familial, that is just like, yeah, just kind of emotionally not healthy in that way. And I think you just did a really great job of just now and also within the song of articulating all of that and the journey that you went through. And what I really love about the song too is throughout, you know, the chorus you say, I thought your hurt would stay your hurt and I'd take it off when I wanted to, but I found that ain't true because you made it mine too. And towards the end you say, you never asked me to do, but I did it for you. I made it mine too. And that like lyric change just made me, you know, it really very much shows the growth when you realize, like you said, it takes two to tango. And you realize like, oh, I was also part of this dynamic, you know?
Totally. It's like people say, boundaries are where you end and I begin. And yeah. I feel like, yeah, that like I learned that. And also there's a Bell Hooks quote, which is, I'm gonna paraphrase it because I don't have the exact words, but it was in like All About Love or whatever that book is. But about like the art of loving requires us to learn how to be alone. Because when we can truly be alone or solitary, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape. And so that was like huge to me because I feel like,
wow.
Yeah, like just both of those things I learned around the time that I wrote this song. So I was just like chewing on a lot of that, of like these dynamics, like we can put ourselves in a victim mindset, but like if you got yourself, like, I don't know, if you're in a codependent dynamic, like you are probably, even if maybe the person's leaning on you more than you are them, like, yeah, they're like, it's important to recognize your own role in all of it and in setting your own boundaries. Like, yeah, I don't know, standing in what's yours and what's theirs and not like letting those two like tie all together.
It's a really important lesson to learn. And I think also one that once you learn it, you kind of keep relearning it or re-exercising it through life, you know?
Totally.
The next song I'd like to discuss is I've Got My Work to Do, which was on my Spotify Wrapped last year because I loved it so much. Can you tell me about that one?
Oh my gosh, of course. I'm honored. Yeah, that one I wrote on tour in Texas in the fall of 19. So it's actually the oldest one on the record, I think.
Oh, wow.
I wrote the bulk of it then. And it was like, I played it at my senior recital in college. I graduated in 2020.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, like I eked it in under the wire. It was like end of February was my senior recital in Boston. So I got to do that before it all hit. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of felt like my little, like, I'm going to shoot for the moon, like kind of song of like, I'm going to go for it, even though I'm scared and like, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. And it's funny, like, yeah, I kind of like threw it away and hated it for a long time. Like my dad was always like, I love that song. It's like it's like a real country song. It's like very like Hank Williams-y or whatever. And he really liked it, but pretty much like I didn't play it for a long time. And then when I started playing with a band in Nashville, I was just like, this is like the most fun to play live. So playing with a band really like reinvigorated my love of that song. And for a long time, I thought it was cheesy. But I realized that like every record needs some degree of that. Like,
that's real. Yeah.
Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, like Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow is like one of the cheesiest songs ever. And it's such a bop. Like you need some degree of like up tempo, happy, cheesy, like I'm going for what I want kind of song. Yeah. So motivational bops. So that's kind of where that came from. And, yeah, just, it was really cool getting Sarah Jarosz to sing on it. That was like I think one of my favorite moments of the record is just like her vocals on that track. It was like such a cool experience tracking with her. She's such a pro.
It makes me genuinely so happy that you have gotten to work with her and tour with her. Yeah, honestly, incredible. How was touring with her?
It was so cool. It was very cool. I'm like, she's just one of the coolest. And I know you knew me in high school, and I would go see her shows. Like,
Yeah.
I saw her live a bunch in high school, and like, yeah, it's definitely that and teaching at Interlochen this year have felt like full circle moments in a sense. And like, my mom came to uh the last show of the run that I did with her. I did like 9 shows with her or something on the road.
Mm.
And my mom came, and we just like, I watched, like after I played, I watched Sarah's set with her, and like we were just like dancing and singing along
so
to
sweet.
especially the older songs that we like saw her play live when I was like in high school. So it's been so cool that alone, and then like getting to meet fans who are like young girls with their moms, like
Yeah,
who,
wow.
like just like that's been so incredible. Like some of whom found my music through when I was opening for Sarah, and then I hit Texas again recently, and they came back, and like, just
amazing.
like, yeah, knowing that like, I don't know, it's just cool to like have those full circle moments happen, and then also see like another generation of like young musicians or music lovers, like young women coming through. And like, I like to think that I am a good influence for young women who want to like pursue their dreams. And I think that that song in particular is all about like, you don't have to dream of being someone's wife or being like a good daughter. Like, dream of like swearing and messing up and like taking up space and like going for the big scary dream and being maybe a little selfish in the sense of like, yeah, you don't have to live for other people. Like, you can go for what you want. So
well, I'm very
really
happy
cool
that it made it on the album because I think that it's a message that resonates with a lot of people. And like you said, I think it's nice to have those messages on albums, and that and, you know, all these full circle moments you're having are just like really beautiful. And the whole time you were talking, I was like, wow, I feel like the way that you were in high school going to these shows, going with your mom, and now you're seeing, you know, girls of that age going to these shows with their moms, and, you know, maybe one day they'll open for you or whatever. Like, I think that's really beautiful.
It's so cool. Like, just the Katie Gavin has like a song that's also about just like sexism and feminism and like all of the stuff, but called The Baton on her new record that I've cried to like 4 times already this year.
I've got to listen to it.
Oh my gosh. But it's just about that idea of like girlhood and like, girls and women like uplifting one another, like people raised as girls, just like, I don't know, seeing things they want to do in one another. Like, representation is so important. And also,
it really is. Yeah.
Like, like every woman who's ever done anything has blazed a trail for future women. And like, I just am so grateful to like all the badass heroes, sheroes. I kind of hate that, but also
I know
it, you know, it's functional. Sheroes.
It is functional. Hello, sheroes.
Yeah. Anyway.
You're part of that. You're someone's hero, shero, they row.
I still don't quite believe it, but I am trying to. I'm working in therapy on like accepting things, like instead of just being like deflect.
Yeah. Okay. That was another question that I was thinking about is how are you with accepting compliments and stuff? There's obviously so many people who love your music, and how does it make you like feel in your body when someone is saying that they connect with it?
It for a long time I just feel embarrassed. Like when someone's complimenting me, I'm just like, it's almost like when people are singing happy birthday to you.
Yeah, you're like, what do I do with my body?
Yeah, like, and so if it's at a merch table or whatever, like I'll usually just be like, thank you so much, or whatever. But yeah, I've really been trying to work on like hearing things instead of just like, I feel like the brain takes criticism and puts it in like the top shelf with like a spotlight on it. Yeah. And like just highlights it in big bold letters, and then it takes like compliments and just like puts them in the recycle bin, like, or in the drawer. Like, it's just like, it's like, so I think it's important to not be fueled by like feedback, but also it's like validating to feel seen, and also for people to like share like, oh, this song made me feel this or that, like, and I want to know those things because that's like, I waited 3 years to put this record out. Like, people have responses to the songs, and like I want to be present for like for all of that. Like that's like a huge part of why I do it, is like to be able to like share myself with other people so that they might see themselves in it. And so yeah, just trying to like be able to hear it. So I mainly just like, I have to like, I've made a practice of like writing stuff down in my journal when I'm on tour that made me smile.
Oh, good.
And then it's sweet because when I go back through a town, I'm like, oh yeah, I wonder if that fan's gonna be here. Yeah, my friend Bean has like when he goes on tour, he has like a little notebook that people sign at the merch table, like a little yearbook, basically.
That's amazing.
Which is really cool.
I love that idea.
Yeah, so I've almost thought about doing that, but yeah, just trying to like remember the good things, almost like a gratitude list.
Yeah.
From like real people, not just like, oh, like this publication said this. It's like, I think it means so much more when like someone's like, hey, that got me through my divorce or whatever.
Totally. I also really like Bean's idea because I feel like that's almost something you can do as a bridge to get where you want to be in terms of being able to accept, you know, people's feedback, because it's like, you know, it's kind of you remembering that moment, or, you know, you have a piece of them with you.
Totally.
And yeah, I find that really wonderful. But
yeah, I agree. I think it's such a cool practice.
Yeah. Wrapping up, I have listed a handful of people who I know have impacted you in some sort of way, both people that you know, people that you may not know. This isn't necessarily like rapid fire, but like maybe I'll say their names and you can give me like a 1 to 2 sentence reaction.
I love that.
Joe Buricchio.
Oh my gosh, king. Best song editor ever. Absolute goon.
Brandi Carlile.
Beast. And philanthropist. I struggled with that word. And gosh, I'm so grateful she was around when I was younger. Her and her Boy Scout shirt, slaying, letting us know it was okay to be gay.
Yes.
And slay Americana music.
Exactly. Emmylou Harris.
Oh man. Red Dirt Girl is one of the greatest songs of all time. Absolute queen. I think I would cry if I met her.
Sarah Jarosz. Just
the coolest, classiest, raddest person and musician. Total pro and hero. Shiro.
Jack Schneider.
Oh, sweetie pie, brilliant person, absolute champion of their friends and people they believe in, like the biggest cheerleader I've ever had and one of the best teachers I've ever had, and also a dear pal.
That's amazing.
Incredible guitar player.
Last but not least, your mom.
Oh, bestie. Elise.
Elise for peace.
Yeah. Bestie and sensitive, ADHD. That's something we've been talking about. I love it.
I love
just
that.
recognizing that that's where I get it from. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And selfless. I feel like that is like such a theme of her. Like just always like in her career in nursing and just being a mother and just the way she shows up for her friends, and yeah, just really a selfless person, and yeah, brilliant.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I really have for you today, Liv.
Oh, Martha, thank you so much for having me. Like I'm very honored and excited to see this podcast take flight. The plane is taking off.
The plane is taking off and I'm building it in the air.
Yeah, it's probably still safer than Boeing.
Honestly, yeah. I'm an engineer. Everybody please go stream or purchase Deep Feeler. Liv has the best stickers as well. Like, don't honk at me, I'm a deep feeler. Be nice to me, I'm a deep feeler. That I still need to order. And Liv, where can people find you online?
They can find me. Also, this is the sticker if people are interested. Honk
honk, or don't honk. Please be kind.
Please be kind. This is the laptop version.
I love that.
People can find me on Instagram at liv underscore, so LIV underscore green with an E on the end underscore. Or livegreene.com/shows, or just livegreene.com. But livegreene.com/shows has like, you can sign up for my e-list, which is great. I never ever send emails. I literally will only send you an email when I'm going on tour. So,
Slay.
if you want to come see me live, that's the place to go. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks for having
Thank you,
me.
Liv. Thank you to whoever is listening to this for listening to this, and I'll see you when I see you.
Much love.